Well, hello, amazing, gorgeous you. Welcome to the Whole Life Podcast. Today, we are listening to part two of an interview with Morgan Olliges. We had played part one in, I believe, August of 2019, and now we are listening to her talk on marriage and you know it, sex. We're going to be talking about sex and how to spice up sex and how to navigate sex within our marriages. We're also going to talk on depression, and we're going to talk about how her husband helped her overcome depression. You don't want to miss this one. It is spicy hot. Woohoo! I'm so excited. You know, I myself had repeated the pattern in marriage of marrying someone who didn't love me because I grew up not feeling loved. And this is so important to pay attention to what is going on. And sometimes we need to not over spiritualize it, but really look at it as if, okay, I'm collecting data on what's going on in this relationship. All right. And so there are going to be some things that are imperfect. There are going to be some issues, but can you learn to fight? Is the person growth oriented?
Yeah.
Do you have, I think it's good to talk about libido. So, lots of people wait, and we know what God's word says, but we still need to have conversations before that
Oh yeah.
about, yeah. Did you
Yeah,
guys have conversations about libido before marriage?
for sure.
Mhm.
Yeah, Paul and I talk a lot about how one of the first things we looked for in a guy and a girl was just, were we physically attracted to them? Because it
Mhm.
is so important. It is like people, especially Christians want to be like, looks don't matter. It's what the heart is. And yes, like God looks at the heart, but it is important to be physically attracted to the person you're going to marry. Yes, looks fade, but still, like, it's just, in my mind and Paul's mind, it was just important that we found one another physically attractive and that we knew, like, okay, as we grow, as we get older, like, we're not just gonna like throw in the towel and start like looking like crap and gaining hundreds of pounds. Like, we're gonna want to take care of ourselves for one another and for ourselves. But yeah, that was super important to the both of us. So
Yes, and some people like to have sex in marriage, for example, like every day or twice a day. And then there are other people who are like once a month. And I would say there's nothing wrong with either. And I would say that sometimes we think, well, one's maybe a girl, one's a guy, but sometimes it's swapped, I can say, as a psychologist. And these are important discussions to talk about as far as what you think your libido level is. Because the person with the lower desire is typically going to win.
yeah,
And
yeah,
so,
true.
that's true for everything. There's a higher desire partner and a lower desire partner for everything, for having kids or the number of kids or getting a minivan. I guess
Yeah.
sometimes you get to a place in life where you're like, okay, we have to get a minivan.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I've had two minivans. I can honestly say I only had them when I needed them. If I don't need a minivan, I'm not one of those, hang on to the minivan. I'm like, get rid of the minivan. I have a
Yeah,
friend who is about my age, and I just had dinner with her, and I pulled up and I'm like, they still have a minivan.
that's hilarious.
Like, some
Yep.
people like minivans. Anyway,
Some people do.
no, higher desire, lower desire, and we have to navigate that. Um, maybe we could
Yes.
talk, yeah, maybe we could talk about marriage and navigating marriage a little bit more. Tell
Yeah.
us about high desire, low desire in your marriage,
Yeah.
uh,
So,
in any area. I just wanted to clarify, I'm not like, tell us about your sex life.
no, no, it's not. Hey, we share plenty of that stuff on our too, so it's fine. Um, so when we were engaged, we went to premarital counseling, and we actually took this like very in-depth test. I don't know what it was, but our pastor gave it to us. We like took it online and whatever. I'm sure it's pretty common for people to do that. I don't know, but basically we, just kind of filled it out, and we answered. It showed what our expectations were. And so a lot of the stuff, Paul and I were on the same page. Some of it we were like a little bit off. Some of it we were way off, but it wasn't going to be like that big of a deal. As far as like sex went, I know that Paul had higher expectations. I was like once every few days. And so when we got married, it was something that we had to work through because my sex drive is lower. Part of it was my antidepressants would just kind of and so as I'm getting off of antidepressants, I'm realizing it's going up, which is
woohoo, woohoo.
Yeah, it's good. But we had to figure out how to work through that because I didn't want Paul to feel hurt that like I didn't want to have sex with him or like I wasn't attracted to him, because it was nothing like that. It was just I physically was not feeling it. And then there were times when I was like, I don't want it, but like Paul's not gonna feel loved or whatever, and so we had to figure that out. We actually ended up just setting up where we had sex once every other day, and if we happen to have it 2 days in a row, yippee! But like we made a schedule, and some people are like, schedule, that's so like routine and so boring, but it really helped Paul and I. It helped our marriage, helped our communication, it helped our expectations, and it just made things way easier for us. Like, so it's not for everyone, but I would recommend doing it, just giving it a try for people who are struggling.
I love that. Yeah. Sometimes people get out of the habit of having sex as a couple, and then there can be like this anxiety about approaching it, and it can be really weird. So that's when, as a therapist, sometimes I will assign people to have sex. You just need to have sex every other day and just get back to having sex. Let's just break through that uncomfortableness. How much do you think your mind is a part of sex drive for you?
Oh, a lot. A lot. I mean, if Paul and I like are just in a funk of just like not communicating very well, or haven't seen him like at all that day, and we haven't really gotten to connect on a mental level and just like a personal level, then it's very hard for me to have sex that night, because I'm just like, I didn't even talk to you. Now we're just having sex. Like, what? And it just becomes this physical thing. So like, it's best, sex is the greatest for me when we've been able to have like very intentional time together, just hanging out, eating lunch together. If he comes home from taking a break off of work, and like we just like make a little lunch together, or we go out for dinner, like that means the world to me. Like, it doesn't even have to be anything fancy. Like, we could go to McDonald's. I don't care. If we're just like hanging out and laughing and just having a good time, like that makes me want sex like way more.
Yeah. I always say too that you can go wherever you want to in your mind with sex with your husband, as long as it's with him, right?
Yeah, right.
So just kind of getting a little bit more on the racy side here, like if you have a highlight reel with your husband, you can play that back in your mind to help your mind stay in the game. Or you can think about what it felt like when you were dating him, or you can go to some romantic place in your mind and imagine you're there. So you can do these things in your mind to help kind of heat it up for you. So I think that's a really good secret as well. But yeah, we don't want to feel like, often we don't want to feel used. I think sometimes people can feel used if there's not this connection. I will say this. Did you know that when a man orgasms, he has a release of oxytocin, which is the bonding hormone? So sometimes women are like, when I feel closer to you, then we can have sex. And I there is an argument for that at times. However, your man feels closer to you after he's had sex.
Yes.
So
It's just crazy the way God created our body.
yeah.
And it is sometimes like I've noticed, there have been times when like Paul and I have gotten into an argument, or like we're just not communicating very well, and we're both like, okay, we're not feeling it, but we just need to have sex, because after that we tend to get back on the same page. It's like
Yes.
sex can be great for a lot of things. So
That's right. Or arguing naked. Like there have been times when women like, okay, clothes off because we're going to argue naked. And it's hard to do that because for one, you become less defensive, I guess, because you're standing there vulnerable in front of
yeah,
someone.
yeah.
And it's also, it's going to lead to closeness. It's just going to lead to closeness. Yeah.
Wow, okay, I'm gonna have to give that a try. Paul's gonna be like, what kind of
Yeah.
conversations are you
Yes,
having?
yes. Hey, you said something earlier that I really like. You said that Paul's not going to feel loved if we don't have sex. And so you've been able to realize that's part of his love language, let's call it. And I love that you've been able to embrace that because a lot of times it's hard for men with the way that they're socialized to talk about when this doesn't happen, I don't feel loved. I don't feel pursued. It's more common for women to use that kind of language, just period, and talk about our emotions.
Mhm,
And I think we need to be aware with our husbands that they have the same feelings we have. They're not as good at communicating it. I mean, they might feel the way they feel in different circumstances, but they have the same feelings we have. They are more vulnerable than often they let us see because of the way that we socialize men.
mhm. Yeah, it was really important. Probably, I guess within the first year of our marriage, we did some counseling and just kind of learned one another's love languages,
Mhm.
because and learned how to give to one another.
Mhm.
And we've done counseling on and off throughout our whole marriage, like not because necessarily bad things were happening, but we just think counseling is awesome. And it's great to like go to other people who can speak into your life, speak godly wisdom into your life that maybe you just had no idea about. And so just on and off throughout our whole marriage, we've had awesome counsel from people, that have just opened our eyes to like the other one's brain. And like it's just crazy to learn things about the person you love that you just had no idea they were thinking that way. And it makes life so much easier once you do know those things, because you can then take action and learn. And it takes time, it's a process. Like Paul and I are still both learning how to love one another in the way that we each need to be loved. But you do then, like, you have the tools. You can't say any longer, there's no excuse as to why you're not like loving them the way they need to be loved. Or at least trying and working on it. So
That's right. And keeping ourselves regulated and each other regulated. The other day, it was no, Sunday, Tim and I were driving in the car and I asked him a question that had one of those time triggers that I didn't realize. And I saw his voice start ratcheting up a little bit. And I saw it before he did because I'm watching his nervous system
mm-hmm.
activate. And I
Yeah.
just put my hand on his neck, which he likes, and kind of rubbed his cheek a little bit, and he kind of softened. And that's such a different approach than, why are you getting so ticked off, right? Or why are you
Yeah,
ratcheting up? But
so true.
yeah, so we can work on our own nervous system, but we can also be there to support the nervous system in front of us that we are learning to know. And because we're learning to know it, we can learn how to help regulate it and like do this co-regulation thing. I mean, we have this whole set of mirror neurons in our brain that can help with that, and God put those things there.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's funny because when, like you said, I can see when Paul is like starting to like shut down. And then I'm like, oh no, okay, I can either respond in a harsh or hurt way of like, why are you shutting down? Like, that's not gonna help. Or I can, encourage him and be sweet to him and love on him the way that I know will like get him out of that shutdown stage. It's not easy all the time, though, that's for sure.
Yeah, and we have to be careful about the stories we're making up. And I love using that language. Like the story I make up about you going back into your office is that you're trying to separate from me. And I know that's probably not true, but it's a story I'm making up about it. That's a lot better than, why are you separating from me?
Yeah. Yep.
It's a lot better received because we're acknowledging, oh, this might be a story I'm making up based on my own narratives and my own life.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I actually today just told Paul, like, for me, I'm a person, like, I'm an open book as long as people ask the right questions.
Mhm.
But if people aren't asking questions, I probably won't say anything. I probably won't, like, tell them how I'm feeling or what I'm thinking about something. And there are times when I will just speak out what I'm thinking. But for Paul, like, I told him today, I was like, when you don't ask me, like, really specific questions, I feel like you don't care. You don't, like, even, I feel like you don't even want to know what I'm feeling or what I'm thinking. And that's not the case, but that's just like the story that I'm creating in my head. And so I need you to be aware of that story that I'm creating in my head and maybe, help me by asking more questions. So
Yeah, I think when we've had an abandonment journey in our past that we have overcome or are overcoming, we want to be pursued. And then as women, we want to be pursued often too. Whereas Paul and his personality, he might want to kind of pull in, and he will tell you if he wants you to know certain things. Like so it's different. And
yeah,
I love that as a younger wife, you're doing him that solid of saying, this is what I need from you. And I do try to get other wives I see and hear to do the same thing. Just throw them a solid and just say, what would really help me right now is if you told me, I love you and I want you and I accept you just as you are, because we're waiting for them a lot of times to intuit it.
yeah. And a lot of times women and myself will get mad of like, well, they should know that that's what I need. It's like, God did not make men mind readers, ladies. And so sometimes we do just have to be like, look, if you could just tell me you're here for me, it's going to be okay. Like, you love me, that would be great. And then just be thankful that they then take what you said and do it. And instead of taking what you said and being like, who cares? Like,
Right. And that you're going to need to tell them again because they're going to forget, because they're going to try to give you what they think they need, but it's not necessarily what you need.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
So, and then when they do say it, even though you prompted them, we have to receive it. We have to soften into it.
Yes,
Just
because
like we
we
have
all,
to, yeah, just like we have to soften into all those yummy things God tells us.
yes, yes.
I love the way you were talking about Paul and you being a picture of Christ in the church. And I love the way that Paul really helped you get out of depression. And when you were saying that earlier, I was thinking about how Jesus wants us to bring our stuff to him so that he can heal us and rescue us. And Paul, it sounds like he set up a lot of appointments for you and really helped you get motivated to uh, get prayer. And I see a lot of Jesus in that. And I believe that the Lord is like that for us. He's like, reach out your hand to me, talk to me. I want to help.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the scriptures that God kind of gave me during the few days and then months afterwards of just really like moving forward and recovering was Psalms 18. And David says, I cried out to my God and he answered me. And it's just like, yeah, God is not just going to sit around and do nothing. Like when your prayer goes up, like it does not come back void. God is moving. It doesn't always look the way we want it to look, but like he is doing something, and you can always hold on to that promise that like when you cry out to God, he hears you and he is answering you. Like, so yeah, I mean, I absolutely feel like Paul was a picture of Jesus and just God's love for me during that time. Like I felt the Lord through Paul.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
He does draw us through cords of human loving kindness. So that's in the Old Testament somewhere. Hey, when you have some time, Isaiah 54 is on my heart for you. I believe the Lord has some new things for you guys, and that you'll find some good treasures there, including enlarging the place of your tent and some of the things doors God's going to be opening for you. All right. So Squishy, your fur baby,
Yes.
what's Squishy's love language?
Belly rubs, food, and she loves to go out wherever I go. So like if I leave her in the cage, she's like, I hate you. But if I take her with me, she's the happiest little pup ever.
What would you say to a woman who is struggling with depression or suicidal thoughts right now?
I would say that something when I had depression and anxiety and whatnot was I believed that maybe this was just my hand in life. Like this was just the cards that I was dealt, and God wanted me to learn how to live with depression and suicidal thoughts and anxiety and whatnot. And that is a lie straight from hell. And you have the power and authority to send that lie back to hell and never come back. So I don't ever believe that God intended you to struggle with depression or death thoughts or like you were called to be alive, and Jesus died, he died, and then he was resurrected so that you could keep living. And so like we have to just lay everything out in front of God and just be like, Father, take it all, because we don't have the strength to overcome things. We overcome by the blood of the Lamb and our testimony. And so just give it all to God, whether you're struggling with depression or anxiety or fear or any other thing, no matter what it is, like God is way bigger than your struggles. And so give it all over to the Lord, and you walk in your power and authority as a daughter of Christ. And you can only walk in that power and authority if you know who God is, and you can only know who God is by getting into his word, by praying and talking to him, spending time with him. That was one of my biggest struggles, was like I just was not disciplined in getting in the word and talking to my father, my creator, like the one who was like, hey, give me all your issues and I'll take them off your shoulders. Like, so really like make yourself do that until it just becomes a habit. Yeah, and you're
Beautiful.
loved.
Where can we find out more?
Our YouTube channel, just youtube.com/PaulandMorgan. I've got all of our videos are there, obviously, but I have specific videos where I talk about overcoming depression and anxiety. I share my testimony of coming out of a very toxic, unhealthy relationship to meeting Paul, and just like the stark contrast between that relationship in my relationship now, and just how present God is now when it was just like so dark and desolate in my last relationship. So yeah, YouTube.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for being on the show and being authentic and just telling us all the things in your heart. Just so beautiful. And for those of you listening in the Whole Life Tribe, I adore you and I'm praying for you every day. Write us and tell us what you think. And if you are struggling with suicidality, you tell someone right away and you make sure you're safe. Call 911 if you are in real danger. We love you, love you, love you, and can't wait to see you next time. That was a fun podcast, wasn't it? I bet you had some ideas of how you can spice up your sex life for those of you out there who are married. So much fun. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. And hey, Are you on our mailing list? Because we send out notifications of podcasts weekly. We also send out things that God has had on my heart for you, and we send out deals and all kinds of things. So make sure that you go to drbarbaralow.com and opt in to our mailing list. You can also look there at the different courses and products that we have for you. And do you know about our freebies page? Because if you go to drbarbaralow.com/free gifts, we have all kinds of free gifts for you. Why? Because we love you. We really do. And God has given us an assignment to heal the hurts of women that they could launch into their purpose. And that includes God's purpose for your marriage. So I'm so happy that we had you for this podcast. We treasure you always, always. We are lifting you up in prayer daily. We adore you, and we'll catch you next time.